Awesome. Hey, thanks for coming out to this demo. I'm gonna get it right out of the bat. Like, I don't do this. Like, you guys might know us from social media, think that we're just, doing this sort of thing all the time. Greg likes to do it, but it's different to be behind a camera than to be in front of 150 people. But that's cool because the point of this presentation, it's really not about me, it's not about Greg, it's really about the post-frame industry and trying to bring it to the next level, not just from like a quality or a better building for our clients, but we all know a big problem is labor. Anybody out here running a business? Give me a show of hands, okay? Is it easy to find good work or workers? Okay, nobody's like, yeah, it's easy. So I've always been fascinated with manufacturing, with efficiencies, with production. Like, that's what I did before I became a builder. I was a product or a manager of production, and it was all about getting 100% efficiencies. That's how you make money. That's how you're better and able to do more work. And in construction, we don't get paid unless we do work. So how do we do more of it? Do it better and make more money, like, right? Everybody like making money. It's always been basically Greg and I. We've had a couple helpers here and there, but we're not a big crew. But I think we've developed systems that have allowed us to excel, build better and faster. And today we're gonna start at the foundation because that's the most important. And I'm gonna take you through what I believe is a good way to build a strong, efficient post-frame structure and get it to the point that probably everybody in this room has already taken it further. So we're going to get it to where you're trussing, right? It doesn't matter whether you put a post in the ground, you build on a foundation wall. When the posts are up, it's time to truss. So that's kind of where we're going to take this demonstration. And the big thing is, I don't want to just sit here and talk. We're going to be doing hands-on. We have to cut some lumber. We've got to do all this stuff. But at any moment, I want you guys to feel free. There's a microphone over here. I would love for you to ask questions. It doesn't have to be related specifically in the moment to what's going on, but we will definitely have time at the end of the show to ask Greg all the burning questions that you guys have. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with the layout. So I made this little mock foundation wall, and I want to start by saying that we have not put wood in the ground since 2014. And I don't want anybody out in the audience to think that I'm talking bad or it's a bad thing to put wood in the ground. There's always a situation, but when you're starting off a business, as I was, in the post-frame world back in like probably 2011, somewhere in there, there's everybody and their brothers putting up buildings. The farm market was pretty good. Everybody was doing buildings. And how do you set yourself apart? Well, for us, it was, we're going to build a little bit different. And at the time, nobody was really doing foundations, pier systems. It was all throw the post in the hole. We're going to get this one done and we're going to go on to the next one. So we've kind of developed the system. I feel like maybe other people do it, and good, that's awesome. So let's get started, okay? So you roll up to a job site. I love a foundation because you don't have to dig holes. We're in the Midwest, and a lot of you guys are probably the Midwest, but there's nothing worse than starting to dig and you hit rocks, you hit tree roots, whatever it is. We like to show up and not have to do any of that. So the foundation wall is a benefit from our standpoint, from a labor standpoint, right away. Now, I know a lot of you are going to say the cost is usually an issue to do a foundation, and we're going to try to talk about that, so remind me if I don't touch on it later, but we found that this, a lot of times, is still a better cost option for the client because of our labor savings and ability to move pretty quickly. So the first thing that we're going to do is I want to show you how we lay out, and I'm assuming everybody is going to be very similar, that you take your tape measure, and in this instance, we just have this little mock wall. Greg, if you would, go ahead and get a mark 10 feet. Yeah, go ahead and go 10 feet from the corner. And I'm going to get a mark down here. Okay. Okay, so I'm marking 15 feet. And this is a little bit odd. We're going to do a 5-foot post spacing. It makes no sense at all, but 8 foot was getting too big, and I thought 4 was too small, and it just worked out for my materials. So a lot of times you're going to do a 3, 4, 5 triangle, maybe. You guys know that. Pythagorean theorem. A lot of us hated math, but as builders, math is literally what I use all the time. Now, I don't use Pythagorean theorem from a 3, 4, 5. I use an app on my phone. I recommend everybody to get it. It is the Construction Master Pro. I might have given like $10 one time to get it, but Greg, you're at 10 feet. Okay, so I'm gonna put in 10 feet as my run. I'm gonna put in 15 feet as my rise, and it is gonna give me a diagonal measurement of 18 and 5/16. So I'm gonna take this tape measure, and this is how I would typically want to lay out a perfect square building. If we're not on a foundation, doesn't matter where you're at, you need your corners square. So we're just gonna come over here and we're gonna look at this in, was I 5/16? What was I? 18 and 5/16. So we're sitting at like 18 and an eighth, right? That's like a typical way to do this, and you can shift your lines around. Is everybody with me on that? That's pretty basic. That's a two-man job. I need Greg to hold this tape measure. I need him to do that. So for me, how can I do it more efficient? I was introduced to this tool here, which is the layout station. And this is a $2,000, well now because of pricing increases, this used to be like a $1,500 tool, now it's $2,000. As a business owner, I hate spending money. I love tools, but I hate spending money. This guy right here reduces all of my labor and does it quicker for this layout. So you guys are gonna watch this. Anybody that wants to, I tried opening this up because I'm gonna be in this corner. Once again, we'll be here for basically all afternoon. So if you guys wanna see this in action later, or the Stabila booth is over there. But all I have to do is I've made myself an 1.5 inch mark off of both corners. I'm not gonna assume that everybody builds the same way, but I always, if I'm building a 40x60, the foundation is 40x60. And my posts are set in at 1.5 inch. We all do like overlapping girts on the outside. We don't do bookshelf or anything. So I've got an 1.5 inch mark, which is going to be the corner of my column. I'm just gonna turn this on, and it's gonna be shooting a plumb bob point right down the bottom. You can see it here if you're able to. And it's self-leveling too. So even if I'm on a tilt, it's going to right now, if you're close enough, you would hear it. It's going to be leveling itself. And I'm on my mark. Now this is the beauty, guys. I was blown away when I seen this the first time, and most people are. I'm gonna come down to the end of my wall. Once again, remember that it's just a one-man operation. So Greg's usually at this point cutting lumber up or being efficient doing something else. I'm gonna turn this on. And I'm gonna set this up. I can go do something if I want to. If it's a very long wall, it might take, I don't know, a minute or so. This is gonna actually be probably a little quicker, but unfortunately I started it on the wrong side. What this tool is doing right now, I don't know if you can see this right here. This is moving, this whole thing is moving. You might even be able to see the laser. It's a 180-degree layout station, and it's moving back and forth talking to this receiver right now, and it's just found it. It slows down really. Hear the beep? So we're good. So this thing is now locked on, right? Once again, it's just me, no tape measures. I can walk over to the other side of our building, pull a tape measure out if we're doing 100 foot, it doesn't matter, and I'm gonna set this right down here, and it's gonna beep at me where the 90-degree, perfect, every time. Lasers don't get blown in wind. This requires one person. If you're doing this sort of work at any capacity, this tool pays for itself instantly. And it's not just laying out a building, we use this all the time. Interior layouts, partition walls, it gives you a full laser line anywhere. Now let's say you've got a 100-foot wall and you've got 3 overhead doors that are 24 foot and it's really hard to snap a line. At any point we can just come in here and mark an exact layout. Now I always get people that say, does it really matter? Does it really have to be that consistent or efficient? And my response usually is that if you're off a 1/4 inch here and you go 20 feet in the air and you try to square a roof, you're going to be inches off potentially. And everything is made easier by spending time and effort at the foundation and the layout. I have never found a concrete guy to give me a concrete foundation that is perfectly square and accurate dimension. Have we? Now, there's always a couple good dimensions, but they're never all good. So this is something that day one we show up and we're laying this out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to lay out our brackets. Greg, let's go ahead and leave this set up and let's just lay out our 5-foot marks. So I don't know where my tape is. Okay, good. Greg's got it. You lay out that side. Go ahead and do your 410.5. Yes. And right here, we can see exactly where we need to be. We don't have to snap lines because at any point, this guy is still giving me an exact location in the plane, in the outside wall where these posts are going to be. So let's go ahead and set these brackets. Now it's kind of nice because in here we've got, I can see exactly where my laser is. So I'm just going to go ahead and set it on my laser. Go ahead and set your middle, Greg. Do you eyeball that sucker? Okay. Eyeballing is probably sufficient in this application. I think you guys are going to get the idea, but I want to do this whole process. I don't want to just skip it. Have I lost anybody yet? Does anybody have a question to this point? Don't be shy. Like, I don't want this just to be no questions and just me talking. Anybody? Okay. Now, we've been using the Permacom brackets since day one. It's the only bracket we've ever used. The reason I really like them is Midwest Permacom, which is like a sub-franchise of Permacom, is very local to us. The guys down there are amazing. The service is amazing. I call, I need them, and they drop them at my place within a day, if not, a couple days, whatever. Obviously, it always depends, but these are a key to building, in my opinion. I didn't really actually talk about this. The big thing that I've noticed, and I'm curious about you guys, is that we got a question. Go ahead before I get into this.
I think this is on. Check. Okay. So with the Stabila, we were thinking one of the disadvantages was not having a line on the ground to go for an interior layout that you would probably set up maybe before you put all your posts in place and get your skirt board on. What do you think?
So when you're saying an interior layout, are you saying if you're going to be doing interior walls?
Mm-hmm.
So you already have a slab poured?
Mm-hmm.
So you could do all that day one. This is only to set up the exterior.
Just the posts, yeah.
Yes, so now for us, every bracket is in the exact position of the exterior wall that if a plumber is on the job site and they're doing some underground.
They just have to be at a post location though, right?
Sure, or, I mean, you could put a mark.
Yeah.
Right? I could snap this line if you wanted to. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
The whole point is we do snap a line. We still snap a line because outside it's hard to see a laser.
Okay.
But the laser allows you to get an accurate placement down the entirety of the wall in a perfect square without ever doing,
And it goes along the ground, so you just line it, snap it where the laser is, and you got
right.
a line. Yeah.
Typically we'll go 25 feet down a wall, maybe 32 foot. Put a tick mark, and then come back and snap it so we can turn the laser off and not burn the battery.
Gotcha.
But the point is more about the efficiency side of getting an accurate layout from day one, first hour on the job site that is then utilized the rest of the job site. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I was talking about post frame in our area in what I do specifically. And I'm sure it has to do with exposure with social media, but I probably get 100 emails every week. That's not a joke. My phone is ringing nonstop, and everybody wants a Barndominium, Raise a hand if you guys are getting calls for Barndominiums. So I don't remember who it was. It actually might have been that guy right there, Matt Griner, who told me, somebody told me that Barndominiums were causing like 60% of their work for 40% of their, was that you or no? It was somebody at a show that I talked to. I thought it was Matt Griner, but they're a lot of work. Barndominiums are not just coming in and throwing up a building and going on about your way. You're dealing with the client more. It's a higher end product that you have to put out. And if you care about it, you might spend a lot of time, but you don't have to do a Barndominium. Like, that's not your business. We are into it. We like it. Our clients are wanting them. And building with wood in the ground, building without high-end layout to make sure things are precise, like it goes down the line on a much more exponential scale than just building a storage building. So if that's all you do, this might be overkill, and that's totally okay. Something I just wanted to touch on, this process that we're doing is mainly geared towards your high-end buildings that people don't want to spend $100,000 on and it potentially be rotted and have to do repair 30, 40 years down the road, right? These brackets are ICC certified. So that means you can go, they're gonna allow for easy code and permitting. So with that information, you can get mortgages and get finances for barndos, which has been a major sticking point for a lot of people because I think the industry has always been traditionally putting a post in the ground, throwing a house inside of it, and now everybody thinks that when you say I'm building a barndo, it's not something that can be financed and is not a long-term building. So this is a long-term building system. So we've got our brackets. Let's go ahead, Greg, and I'm going to have you set these while I go ahead and get the post set up. Greg is just going to set these with some wood screws because obviously this is concrete. I hope you guys appreciate the gray. I painted it so it looks like concrete. Where is my bracket? Where's that bag, Greg? The bolts. Right here. So this is a hardware pack that comes with our brackets. And this is a Simpson Titan HD anchor bolt. This is what's actually going to hold your bracket into the concrete. We always place it with some Tapcons because when you get a big SDS and you're vibrating, you don't want it to move. So that's what Greg is really doing, is just going to go ahead and put some GRK little stubby screws just to hold it in place. And we're not going to put these in, but this, I don't know, David's right here from Permacom. Is this 8,000 pounds in all good conditions about? It's got like an 8,000 pound lift capacity. But once again, this whole hardware pack, the hardware, the brackets, it meets the ICC certification. So that's the important part. You can't just weld up a bracket, put it on the foundation and meet that. So that's why we use it. It's a feel good for us as a business to know that we're backed by a product that we're not going to have to worry about down the road. So I'm going to take a second. If anybody's got some questions, feel free at this point. We're going to go ahead and get some sawhorses, and we're going to now show you how we get to the point of putting our posts in, because a lot of people I talk to, they might assume that at this point you can cut, let's say you're doing a 10-foot wall, you can cut all your columns down to 10 foot and you're going to set them in the bracket and just go about your way just like you did a post in the ground, right? You know, you're going to stick a post in, go about your way, stick the next post in, let them run long, do whatever you want to do, but we do it all on the ground. Once again, efficiency, safety, and I'm turning 40 this year. I want to do less work. So anything I can do down here, any tool that can make it easier for me, that's my goal. How's it going there, Greg? Good. No questions? So I did a little bit of prep work here, and I hope I can remember what I was doing. We use all laminated Ohio Timberlands. Well, I want to say laminated. These are actually clinch riveted. They are glued, but they're a clinch riveted column. They mill all sides, so we've got a nice a dimension that is true. Nothing worse than doing this with a column where all the plies are at different dimensions. And it's super frustrating if you care about quality, but in general, that's why we like these columns. So once again, it's going to be a little bit weird. I think I'm doing a 7-foot wall just because that's the material that I had, was to make these 7-footers. So I'm just going to get my posts loaded up, and then I'll show you how we ensure that elevation is consistent and accurate across the job, because I think I was getting to that. Foundation walls are never consistent. Maybe you guys are realizing I have trust issues with other people's work. That's very true. All right, so now we're going to bring in a rotary laser. I'm assuming most people that are building post frame have a rotary laser. Anybody don't use a rotary laser? Because I want to know how you can do a lot of the work that needs to be done. Anybody build without a rotary? Okay, I was just curious. That would be pretty impressive. I thought somebody was going to say I use a water level or something. Okay, now this is a 350 is what I use, but really this is probably overkill for most people. They have a lot other options. This does slope. What's the height here? We better go up a little. Anybody that in their face, or are we pretty decent? Oh, it's not spinning. It's self-leveling. So this version specifically does slope, and it's a little bit more robust. It's more professional grade. I like it because I don't have to worry about rain, water, and getting tipped over in the wind. Now what we're going to do is take our grade stick. This always seems to be something that confuses a lot of people, and they don't understand how a grade stick works. But to make it very simple, all we're going to do is turn this on, and we're going to find our laser. Okay, now a lot of times I'll just start on a bracket. It doesn't matter what bracket is. And I'm going to find where I have a solid tone, making sure that my stick is plumb. Got a little level bubble back here, and the reason that matters is because if I'm here, it's a different readout. And if you care about accuracy, you got to do everything right. You can't just half-ass one part of it and then do good on the other part. So we're going to level it, plumb this up. We're a 0. So let's just say I call this bracket 0. This bracket is calling, well, it's really close. This concrete is pretty good, actually. Or it could be my wall spanning the inconsistencies. Yeah. So this is saying it's a 1/4 inch. That's what it's saying. It's saying a 1/4 inch. I need to take my receiver down a 1/4 inch in order to hit that laser perfectly. So what that means from the standpoint of my columns is that I need to cut off a 1/4 inch at the bottom of my column. So all I'm going to do is go around these brackets. I'm going to do this, and for us, what we like to do is find the highest bracket. We want to find the highest bracket because a lot of times our concrete is not perfect. Our brackets are more than 1.5 inches inside the wall, and when we go to put our grade board and then our trims, if we are going below the concrete for 0 grade, our trims are sticking out, you might have water going in. Does that make sense? So we want to find the high point, and then we want to extend our columns at this point. We're going to skip the corner column for a second. This is a 0. This is also, this one tells me to go up a 1/4, which means I'm going to put a minus on that, Greg, would you, before I forget? I put plus. This is a plus a 1/4, because I need to go up, which means now I have a 1/4 inch of gap at the bottom of my my grade stick. It means my column needs to be a 1/4 inch longer to be 0 with that. Same thing here. Okay, so we go around, we get all these measurements. This takes very little effort, and all while I'm doing it myself. This is usually my part of the job, and Greg has a list, and he's off cutting lumber. I'm just gonna set this down right here out of the way. So what do we do with these numbers, and how do we make it efficient and, you know, take it from here to our columns? I want to do everything right here. I don't want to do one at a time. I don't want to stand one column. Like everything that we're trying to do, like I said before, I come from like a manufacturing production mindset. I want to assembly line every process if possible. Thank you, Greg. So everybody knows what a story pole is? We know what a story pole is? Okay, so every building that we do, we create a story pole, and that is going to tell us where every gird is on a wall, where every door is on a wall, what the window height is, truss height, and that is going to be set to these measurements. So we're going to go ahead and lay this out real quickly. We're doing 2 foot, Greg. Let's go ahead and do, 9 3/4 or, yeah. 2 1/4, minus 2 1/4. Let's go 2 1/4. And my heel height is at 7 foot. I think I said I was at 7 foot. Yep, 2 4. Okay, something I see all the time, and it's because a lot of times guys are putting posts in the ground, is you'll drive by a post frame and you'll see the roof on, or the sheet, the purlins on, and you'll see columns just shooting out of the top of the walls everywhere. And I understand that because you're setting a column, you don't know where the roof is at that point. Well, this process is going to allow us to cut our posts to the exact height, all on the ground. I don't like having saws up on a wall or in a lift and you're reaching out. So typically we use a 15.5-inch heel. That is the end of the truss. We use an enlarged heel for efficiencies, for strength, energy. We can get more loose fill insulation out there. So I'm going to mark a 15.5-inch heel. And then I'm going to also add some ears for our tails. Okay, so now we've got this story pole. Let's say, I talked about it, so I better just show you. Let's say we're gonna do a window. I'm only doing a 7 foot, so it's kind of weird, but let's say we're doing a window at 6 foot. Now we wanna be off. Let's go ahead and just put a window at 5 foot. Conceptually, you now see I have a window mark on my story pole that anytime I've got a column that is going to be, it's gonna carry a header for a window, I can mark that now and ensure that it is a level mark from post to post, because we're taking this, we're doing this effort right now with all the foundation work and layout. All right, let's go ahead and roll them to the side, Greg, and put them on the side too. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark window. So I'm going to put window here because I don't want to mark every column for confusion. I only want to mark the ones I know are going to have a window. If I got an overhead door that's 10 foot tall on a 16-foot wall, I know I can always put my 10-foot header mark, and for jam columns, I've got that mark consistent. So I'm also going to take a Sharpie because it's easily visible, and I'm going to say outside. Now what that means is that this is the outside marking. The beauty is we can also mark the inside. So if you've got to do an interior package and you're going to do framing on the inside, we probably would use a 2 foot on center spacing for, we'd maybe go 30 inches or whatever. But we've got the option now on our story pole to do another layout, mark it for inside, and we've got all that information right here. All good? Is it making sense? Yeah? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we've got dimensions. Greg, why don't you go ahead and start over here and give me what those dimensions were. I got to make sure I did some of this pre-work so you guys didn't have to sit there and watch us cut.
Got plus quarter here.
Okay.
Plus quarter.
Okay, plus quarter, 0.
Minus quarter.
Let's see, this is my, okay, minus a quarter. And then those are those guys over there, which we're just going to save for a little bit. Yeah, that's a 0. Yep. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, this one is minus a quarter. I said before that my heel height was at 7 feet. That's where my truss is. That's the bottom of my truss. These columns didn't come the way I guess I would have wanted them to, so we're actually going to cut the bottom, which is nice in this instance because we have a knockout. I don't know if you guys don't use laminated columns. There's a great benefit in a laminated column because you can ask for this knockout, and this is where the truss is going to set. It's a very strong connection. You have a straight down connection. You don't just end up getting a block on the side of your truss or your pole that your truss is going to set on. So we really like this, and the knockout allows us to do this process really well. So this is a -1/4. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go 7 foot -1/4. So this is the location that we're going to cut, and this is going to ensure that this truss pocket is exactly at 7 feet -1/4 because that bracket was slightly high. Make sense? Okay, this one is 0. I actually think I did 1/4 earlier, so I don't know. I prepped the. Oh no, that's 7 foot. 7 foot plus 1/4, and 7 foot plus 1/4. So a lot of times, if you're doing a big building, you've got a full set of sawhorses. You might have 10 columns sitting out here. And now what Greg and I are going to do, typically, is he's going to be on one end. I'm going to be on this end. I'm going to set my story pole at heel. That's always our 0. That is the point that matters to me. I don't go off the bottom. It just seems to be the way we like to do it. I always set it at heel, and then we're just going to make our quick marks. That's pretty easy, Greg. Yep, I've already done that. So you can see how easy this is. All of these columns are now being efficiently marked. But more importantly, it's accurate, it's consistent. So even if, let's assume one of these marks I had inchitis and I was off 1 inch, it's not a one-time mistake, it's a mistake across the entire job. And if it's just a girt, it's probably an okay thing that is easily fixable versus if I'm marking every individual column that I've stood up in a hole. All it takes is one mistake on one column and then your wall looks like garbage and your customer's thinking, why did I hire this crew, right? So this is important for us. Okay, so at this point, we're just going to go ahead and repetitiously and in an assembly line fashion, go ahead and make these marks. And there's a lot of times where this turns into competition for Greg and I. And he tries to outbeat me on what he's doing, and I do the same. So let's go ahead and, Greg, go ahead, buddy, cut that, man. Yep. Here you go, man. Yeah. I'm paying him to be here, so he's got to do something. Are we at any questions yet? Is anything confusing? Does anything seem to be... I feel like this is a very sensible approach to building, but the main thing that the reason I wanted to do this when the organization or the association asked me to present was I felt like when I talk to people through social media, they've put posts in the ground and they've built a certain way their entire career. Sometimes it just takes a little nudge to try something new. Yeah. Okay, so, we need that again, Greg. We got to cut our ears off. This is? Oh, this is our corner. This is our corner. This is a special post. Let's go ahead and detail our corner post. I'm going to grab, where's that little board at? Right here. So corner columns, they're a little bit unique. This is what a sidewall column is going to look like for us, and those are the easy ones, pretty quick to do. We've got a little bit of work to do on a corner. You want to grab me the pad load? Oh, no, I'll screw it. So with a corner column, we actually didn't have to cut the bottom off. So I wouldn't have done that normally. Made a mistake. It happens, So typically we're going to fill this block in for our corner column. We're not going to do anything to it. Okay. So I'm just putting a 412 pitch, standard pitch of our trusses. Greg, can I see those glasses, man? Safety first. Just hold the column, yeah. Okay, we're gonna need one more block. So with a corner column, I do get questions about what supports the truss. On an end, I'm assuming it's very similar to all buildings. We're just gonna put a block here. But once again, because I have the exact location of a heel, which I didn't put it on this one, or I'm missing it. You got any more, Greg? We just pull one off or you want to just pull one of them guys there? We might need that. Because I know originally I wasn't planning on it, but this is the heel here, I'm going to be able to put a block and know right where my truss is going to set. Okay. Now the other thing I wanted to say at the start, and honestly I just forgot, is that, you know, there's a million and one ways to skin a cat. Everything we do here is what's worked for us. I love social media because I share what we do, and then people like to tell me I'm wrong and how they do it. And while a lot of people are afraid of posting what they do because they're worried about those haters out there, honestly, if you look at what they're telling you, sometimes they're actually giving you a good insight into how you can improve what you're doing. Because if you think you got it all figured out and you're not still learning, man, it's over. You're just not going to go anywhere. So this is a girt location, so I'm going to make a mark real quick at 5.5 because I'm using a 2x6 girt, and I got to give myself we'll go with a 8 5/8 board. Okay, so this is our heel block, and this is going to sit on the outside of the column, and it's what we're going to set our truss on when we first set it on the outside of our wall. Once again, we're doing this here instead of later climbing up or getting in a scissor lift to figure out where our truss height is. Greg, you want to grab that 6 or that 10 footer there for the 2x6? 9 times out of 10 on our buildings, we are doing an interior package. And we always frame an interior corner so we have something to attach to. I don't know if this is really necessary, it's just how we've always done it. We weren't going to get into this, were we? We talked about it. I wasn't going to go this deep, but we're just going to do it because I think it's just another part of the process. Just go ahead and mark that down there, Greg. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and cut that off. Engage safety squints, okay? So typically we run all of our sidewall interior girts first, and then we come in and run our end walls. And so that's the purpose of this, because the plane of the post on the corner is turned sideways from, or take that back, I'm sorry, I totally did that backwards. This is going to be turned 90 degrees from all of your sidewalls. So your end wall corner post, we want to plane it in. So that's the point of this. And you might make more sense when we go ahead and put it up. Now, the other thing I wanted to note, Greg said, man, this is a really piece of garbage lumber that you picked out, Kyle. And that's because people always ask, how do you guys get straight lines? How does it look good? And it really boils down to, you can't just pull lumber out of the pile. You know, we've learned over the years where it matters and where you can kind of fudge things a little bit. In this particular instance, you're not going to twist and pull this column. So we're going to use our crappy lumber here because we just need it for blocking. Oh, good question. That was another thing that we were going to cover. So he asked, do we screw everything or do we nail? I would not screw everything because I think a nail has a much better engineered strength, but also it's not as fast and it's pretty expensive to use screws. So this is what we use for all of our framing on the ground. And this is a Beck Fastener Jumbo Nailer. It looks quite heavy and large, and it is definitely heavy, but this is all being used typically in this motion. We're not up on a wall, and this is a small nail that it shoots. This is a 4-inch 20 penny ring shank galvanized. Like, these nails are amazing. When these are set, because of this special coating, you're not pulling it out. You will have to cut it 99% of the time. I can't say 100% because that's probably not true. Where's the, this is a 3-inch Paslode ring shank nail. Which style do you want used on your building? For me, this is the only way we would frame, but for the demo, because they want us to be able to take this out of here when we're done, I don't want to cut a bunch of nails, so we're just screwing it. But all of our framing connections are done with either this, or we use all maize galvanized. Everything is galvanized. We don't go with hardened except for on our purlins. Why? It's for consistency and ease of getting supplies. You know, I just get one box, I get bulk in these guys, and I know they're gonna withstand. It's always been what's been engineered into our buildings. So yeah, good question. Thank you. So it's pretty impressive. This will shoot a 6 3/8 60 penny nail into your purlin through the 3.5-inch side of a 2x4, and it will do it. And it's pretty impressive, but I'm not lugging that around on a roof. I'm not having a hose, so until they make it like hose-free, yeah, we're gonna do all that by hand. All right, let's just get this guy finished. Just gonna throw one down here. Okay, so at this point, I'm not gonna do the end walls yet. Let's go ahead and stand this, or let's go lay this guy out. And, yep. So that's your corner. Go ahead and take that bad boy, Greg. Now at this point, you've got your pile. We got all of our brackets marked so that there's no confusion. I know this is a 0. I'm gonna make sure that I lay it out at the 0 bracket, which is this one. And if you don't have a horrible wall that is like this, you can do this method. Let me go ahead and get this moved out of the way. Sometimes it's hard for me to do multiple things at once, talk and work. But what I was saying is that if your wall isn't too bad, you can just set your column up against your bracket. People ask me when they've never done this, how do you actually frame the wall square? Like, that seems like a lot of work to get it all squared up and so that you can frame it so that when you stand it up, it's not like this, and then you got to push it like this, and then your connection gets all weakened. Well, since we spent the time laying out the foundation, getting the brackets, we know that these are all in a straight line. We can, if we're not too inconsistent on the height of our wall, what we will do, if that happens, is we'll make a bottom 0 mark. So wherever the bottom of that story pole lands, we'll hit a mark, and then we'll set the post into the bracket and line up that line with the bracket. That is ensuring that the wall is all in the same plane. Does that make sense? So we're starting, at least the posts aren't kind of one this way, one that way. And then what we're gonna do, Greg, why don't you go ahead and do that? This is kind of Greg's thing. This is what he does on the job site a lot of times, is we're gonna hook the nearest bracket and we're gonna measure, this is a 410.5 off the bracket because we were losing 1.5 inches. We got 5-foot spacings. So yeah, you can do that because why don't you go off the bracket since that's what I said there. We're gonna set these at 410.5, 910.5, 1410.5, and that is now ensuring that these posts are gonna be square enough. No lumber's perfect, so there's always going to be a little bit of inconsistencies or whatever you got going on. So now we do this on the whole job site. We usually lay out our whole walls, get all the columns done. By this point, Greg has probably got all the lumber cut. And did you get all the lumber cut, Greg? Awesome. So we've got our lumber pile. Greg always marks it, puts it in a separate pile on the job site. Once again, efficiency. Don't make a pile somewhere that you're not going to use it. You put it where you're going to need it in the future. There you go. Now, notice that Greg went to the top of the wall. Anybody know why Greg started at the top of the wall? Anybody? Yes. You start at the top of the wall from the pile. You don't have to walk over your lumber. You may think, oh, that seems kind of stupid. It's not, because I've tripped on the wall girts many a time, and I'm like, Greg, why'd you put that behind me as I'm walking backwards? So now we've got our girts. We don't do any of our end walls. We let them run wild, but any of these half girts, they're just going to stay off for now. And you have another drill. You can help me screw these real quick. So now we usually start, we don't want to both be on the same column because wood is not straight. So if I start down here, Greg starts up there, and we meet in the middle, man, we can't push and pull the column. We can't make it right. So what I'm going to do usually is I'm going to get started, and we're going to just use those marks we made on our column. We're going to eyeball the center of the column with the marks that Greg laid out on the lumber. So he's already marked these at a 5-foot center. This is where I'm using that jumbo nailer, and I'm just pop, 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 walking up this post, and we can, remember the days where we used to hand pound 20 pennies, and it was like a morning. That's all we were doing, just swinging 20 penny nails. You felt awesome until you were done, and then you were tired. That thing, I can just go and I can frame a wall in minutes, and it's all connected. You want me to kick mine over? That's 10.5. Well, you probably, yeah. Lumber's not perfect. So this is where this, once again, is easier on you. I remember climbing walls, putting lumber into a scissor lift so I can go up and down, and you're reaching out over the lift and you're trying to hold a board and it's not lining up with your post because the post has a twist. And then I got Greg over here pushing and trying to pull it, or you say, good enough. Because it's awkward, it's not very easy. This is something where a lot of times we'll lock this into the bracket down here. We just didn't do it today because I think we're going to need them out in order to lift the wall. But on a big 18-foot tall wall, Greg is usually out at the end. I'm with the nailer, and he's lining up the center of the column with the center lines on our lumber, and he's pushing and pulling it so I can ensure that every post is at least fastened to the proper location on the boards. So once again, not just easier on us, but we have a better quality control by ensuring that this is done. Now, why does that really matter? Why does it matter if your post might have a little bow in it? I'm not an engineer, so structurally it may not mean anything, but I do know that it looks like kind of not the quality of work that I want to leave with, right? So it could be an ADHD or an OCD or whatever issue that I have, but Greg and I like things to look good. We're just gonna go heel on this. Yeah. Now, we're just gonna go at heel for our top nailer. We call this our soffit nailer because what we typically do, we'll line this up with our soffit so that we don't have to go through and snap lines. Like, we already know that the top of this board is where the top of our soffit is, in plane perfectly with our overhang. Since we're not doing an overhang here, I didn't really figure it out. That's like a whole nother thing. I think builder math is something that some people struggle with, but that's a lot bigger than just today's lesson. So we're just going to go ahead and nail this flush with with the heel. What you need, buddy? Little twist. What's going on there? I don't know there, buddy. Okay, the only thing is we did some of this pre, and I'm wondering if we have a 10.5. Do we have a 10.5 in here? This happens. Like, this literally happens, and I think it's another valuable point to this process is we can check our work very easily on the ground. So I didn't plan this. I did not want to look like we made a mistake. I mean, that's not the goal, and I don't know what's going on here exactly. These are all exactly 5 foot. So that means that lumber is just not our friend today. So this is not going to be easy probably because these are short columns. Let's just give it a go, Greg. Now that is very typical. If you guys are all wood builders. I mean, you know that things are not perfect. Go ahead and get that fast, and I'm going to move that. But I would rather fight that right here than potentially 18 foot in the air. Like, that's pretty easy to fix. Now, something I'll point out too is that this process, it doesn't matter if it's 15 feet long or 200 feet long. The only thing that changes is the way that we lift these. This is going to be just Greg and I power, right? We're just going to lift it by hand, but we try not to. We try to do everything with a machine because the machine never wakes up with a sore back. I do. Greg definitely lets me know when he does. So we try to use a machine. So what that means is if we have let's say 120 foot long building, we're going to break it up, try to do it evenly. Maximum, 64 is the most we've ever done. Gets a little hairy. So 48 foot of wall is good. So what we'll do is we'll go to a 48 foot post off the wall. We'll make some stars on that stagger. So you can see this is a stagger. If we were connecting another set of wall, we'd hit a star here, there, there. And that's a visual cue so that when I'm going through nailing, I'm not supposed to nail the one on the other side of the star because that is going to be a disconnect. That's where we're going to finger joint that wall up in the air later. So we just go ahead and we tack that together to keep it consistent so we can continue to push and pull. And then we'll disconnect it later when we start standing wall sections. Does that make sense? Yeah? Are we ready to stand this? So this is where I'm looking for a volunteer. Who wants to give me a hand? Nice. I'm worried about this wall sliding or moving. So really it's a simple stand on the back and just keep it from sliding. I don't know what it's going to do. So we're going to get a little, what's that? It don't matter. I'm gonna get a little bit of prep though, Greg, so we don't have to be standing around with the wall in the air too long. And where's your 3/8? Okay. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and stand this, and let's hope it goes in nice and easy, so Greg and I don't have to struggle. Like, it's okay if it goes down on the ground, I think, because we should be able to get it in. Okay, you get yours in, Greg. Can you get yours in? My way? This is infinitely easier when you have a telehandler or... I'm in here, Greg. All right, you got that? Just hold that. Sledgehammers are definitely better than shoes. Did you get it in? I should have pre-checked these to make sure they all slid in super easy. Are we started at least?
Yeah.
I don't think I should do that with my mic right there. So it is sometimes a challenge to do this because it's just Greg and I. But a lot of times we just got this chain supported or strap supported from our telehandler, our skid loader with a teleboom, and it's actually a lot safer. What side? I think we just need to lift it up a little, Greg, and set it in. You can get it in there? There you go. Okay. That actually brings up a good point. So these brackets are the 63 OTs. It's a 3-ply, 2x6 bracket, OT being Ohio Timberland. So not all brackets are going to fit all columns. We've made that mistake. We got the wrong brackets, and then we had to plane all of our columns down. So these are 4 3/8, give or take, because they've planed them down, which means that if you try to put a different bracket or a different column that's 4.5 inches or even bigger, it ain't gonna go in. So we've had jobs where we've learned those lessons over the years. So now what we're going to do, geez, I'm starting to breathe hard, is we usually pull out our plate level. And the reason we like a plate level is because tall walls, you can use a 4-foot level here, and this could be level. You guys have seen over this demo on these short columns how not perfect they can be because that's wood. And so by setting the plate level as high as possible, we're getting as close to the truss heel as possible, and that is where I'm most concerned with being plumb. I don't care if the bottom 3 feet is plumb and then my post goes way out. Like, I want to try to get all of my truss locations as plumb as possible to the bottom. Okay, so this is where typically this is Greg's job. He makes sure it's perfect. He's got the eye for it, and I'm going to fasten it. And what I'm doing is lining up the outside of my column to that laser line that we had from the beginning. So this is a perfect straight wall from the beginning at the bottom. Let's see here. I'm just trying to get in position. That's still pretty tight, isn't it? I wish my concrete was better. So this is the hardware pack fasteners that come with the sturdy wall brackets. Greg is going to give me the okay. And I'm going to put a lower fastener in. I don't have the time for that. We're going to use this drill, Greg. I know it's a little bit quieter. Okay, so once I get the bottom fastener in, it's easier for Greg to kind of, in the wind, sometimes you get wind pushing on this wall, and I lock in the bottom and he can hold it a lot better to make sure that it's plumb. So, are we good? All right, I'm not going to put all 4 in. We're just going to move down the way. You do want to put all 4 in a typical situation. All right, buddy. Let me get my hammer there. Thank you. Okay. Yep. Tell you what, this is a lot easier though than putting a 24-foot post in a hole. Can I get an amen on that though? I mean, that's a lot of work. Okay, I'm right where I want to be, Greg. Okay, now, I mean, right down the line, doesn't matter how long it is, you just start putting them together. And when you come to a splice, we just kind of feather that splice in, and then we get our scissor lift outside and we connect those walls. It's always handy to leave your machine hooked up because lumber's not perfect. We can squeeze that wall to this fastened wall and kind of get those joints to tighten up or loosen up if we have to. So that's this wall, and we would come through, we'd put our bolts in. Do you want to drill one or no? Yeah, Greg's going to drill one. And then we'll talk about these couple oddball end walls because I think it makes sense to show. Any questions at this point? Right. I hope that just means I'm explaining it properly. You have that hardware pack? Oh, it's right behind you? Okay. Like nails specifically? I don't even know that I know or care, and I say that because like a Paslow nail, I would never even consider into the job. And I just like buy stuff in bulk, so I don't really know individual prices. You know, if it was something where it's like, can I use this product or use this product? I need to know my cost difference, but for this application, I would pay 5 times for a Paslow or than a Paslow nail for the jumbo nailer because I know how fast it goes and how good it works versus a Paslow nail. You know, it's just one of those things that it's all part of the job cost. So I kind of like, I don't give an option. I'm not asking a client, do you want me to use a Paslow nail or a jumbo nail? Say again? So the story pole, the question is if the concrete height to the truss varies, how do you adjust for that? And that's all in the story pole. Were you in for the beginning or did I not make that clear? Or? Okay, I'm gonna do that right now actually to finish up these end wall columns. And then we're gonna connect them in the corner and that'll basically be it. Well, I mean, you're going to want to probably either on our sidewalls, so typically 3. That's our typical 3 20 pennies. I mean, every situation is different. You know, if you're doing a bigger wall, if you've got, you know, the engineering calls for more, we don't typically engineer every build. You know, we don't have an engineering requirement or a stamp approval unless we're city limits or certain municipalities. And so what we've always done is I used to engineer the building packages. I'd get a package, and I think the last one we did, it was like an 80 by 300 or 80 by 200 commercial structure. And I've always taken that, right or wrong, I'm not saying it's right, I've taken that engineering for a large structure in an area that we build as my like standard. Even if it's a 10 by 20, I still do the same connections, the same lumber materials. Like, I know it's overkill. I could under-engineer probably a smaller project, but it's just not worth it for me from a standpoint of being consistent, and it makes my ordering of materials for every job and Greg's understanding of what we're doing when we show up to the job site. Everything is standardized from up here. So we kind of started up here with this, does that make sense? This kind of highest engineered product, and then went from there. So yeah. That's just in our market how it's done, right or wrong. Maybe every building should be engineered, but if you're building all in the same area, and that's just my opinion, that's not law. No, so the question is if the concrete guy didn't do a great job on the top of the wall, what do you do when your brackets are out of tilt? So we've had that a couple times, and we will set the post in normally it never is tilted sideways. It's always in and out. Does that make sense? Yeah, so if we always try to make sure the outside is good, so we'll cheat the post or the bracket, or the post as far out as possible, and if we have to cut some of the bracket off, we will do that. That's probably only been because these brackets are smaller than the width of the column. So you always have a little bit of wiggle room in there. So back to your question about grade and concrete height versus heel height, when we go get that laser mark around every bracket and put that mark on every bracket, that is now the grade, like that's our grade mark at that exact location. And so we can transfer it to the column, and whether that concrete is 3 inches low in that spot or 3 inches high, we always go off of the heel height as our zero. Oh, okay, good question. Finished concrete. So I always try to talk my clients, let's say it's a shop, I always try to talk them into like a 2-inch lip minimum. A, because it avoids that problem where you might have your material, but B, water splashing, whatever. It's nice to have that 2 inches of concrete, I think, in a flat application where they're looking at top of wall being top of grade. It really doesn't matter because by the time we come out with our interior wall girds, that's fairly flush or just past the wall, and any finishes are going to hide any discrepancies in that floor. Good question though. Did I already do this? I think I already did this one here. So I just need to get my, what is this? This is a quarter? Okay. And then that's a 0. Okay, so when it comes to end walls, this is where you typically will see the columns just flying out of nowhere and you got to go up there and cut them off. I don't want to do that, so I would rather spend 2 minutes doing the calculation. It's super easy, and I can make sure that when it goes up and I put my truss on, my purlins go on and there's no post sticking out past the purlins. So let's go ahead and mark these real quick, Greg. I've got a heel mark right here. Yep. Okay, so I know where my heel is. That's at 7 foot. This column I already did, and you can see I've already got it cut off. That's right where the truss is going to go up, and my purlins can go right across it. I always give myself a 1/4 inch, and the way I figure it out, is I use my Construction Master Pro. This column right here that we're talking about is 9 foot 10.5 inches from the edge of that column. I know that, I laid it out, it's 9, 10.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark 9 foot 10.5, and I'm going to draw this, and it might be a lot easier to see. So this is what I'm going to do. We've got a corner post, the post that I've already made, and I've got my second post in. Fairly easy to see, right? I know that this dimension from the outside to the center, that's 9, 10.5. I know that this is a 412 pitch, right? So everybody's with me when I'm calling that out. This is a 9 foot 10.5 inch run and a 412 pitch. Now what I'm looking for is where does this height come into play so that I can mark this column, cut it off, stand it up, and it's exactly where I want it. So what I'm going to do is go into this calculator. I got 9 foot 10.5. That's my run. I've got a 412 pitch, and I'm 3.5. That's the rise from this corner to this column. That's 3 foot 3.5. But what I also have to do is add in the height of my heel, because remember, we're at the bottom of the truss, but the top of the truss doesn't start for 15.5 inches. So all I got to do is add 15.5 inches. We're at 4 foot 7. I might be able to get away with this guy, Greg. Let's just see. No, I won't. Okay. So 4 foot 7 from the bottom of heel is the top of my truss, and I need to put a little filler block in here. Some guys will use a full 3-ply laminated column all the way up. That's stronger. I think with proper bracing, it's unless you get into a really tall truss that you have a lot of post, we stick with a single ply extension to the top of the truss. Once again, not right or wrong, everybody does it a little bit different, but I'm gonna cut this down so that it goes exactly to the top. I'm gonna write down 4.7 because as I talk, I'm gonna forget that dimension. So here's my truss heel height. I'm at 11 and 9/16. What I need to make sure is I don't wanna be too tall. Things are never perfect. We found that out. If I go off of perfect math and the truss has a slight dip, it doesn't actually work out perfectly. So I need to go 4.7 minus the 11 and a half that's sitting right here. That makes sense? That way, when it's all done. So we're gonna go 3.7 and a half. Go ahead, buddy. And obviously, I have no plans other than to be here till 5 o'clock. They had it a 2 to 5 demo. Demo's not going to take that long, but I feel like this is simple because we've done it for the last 7-8 years. But the hope is that people have never done it and they're taking something away from this demo. So if there is confusion, I would expect that. This has been something that we've done over the last, specifically, I haven't put a post in the ground. I don't know if I said it. 2014. So that's the last time that we put a post in the ground, and believe it or not, it was my own building. So unfortunately, I wish I wouldn't have done it, but at that point in my life, in my career, I thought, it's gonna be okay. Someday I will have to change those columns out, or just dig a hole, cut the post, sink some concrete, and put a wet set perma column, which I actually did have one here. That's what goes in the wet concrete. You can use them on a wall. We use them on piers. It's definitely a learning curve. Knowing the right mix in concrete so that you can get them all placed properly before it gets hard. That is a fun struggle sometimes. But it's a very strong, I don't know, I was told maybe 4 times stronger than a bracket on a wall. And that's even strong. So we love the wet set brackets. Okay, let's go ahead and lay these out, Greg. That's it. Oh, that's our corner column. Yeah, we're gonna leave that. Let me do that. There. Same process. Greg is setting it in the bracket or by the bracket, measuring. Greg, do you want to set it in the bracket? This is only a 2. Let's set them in the bracket. That's going to be a tight one, man. That's going to be a fun one. What was your layout here? Bottom is a 10? Okay, something else Greg does on all these cuts is he gives us a little star. That star is going to signify that that board has been cut down 1.5 inches shy so that we know that this is going to die into our sidewall. Trying to eliminate mistakes as much as possible through a repetitious system of the same thing on every job. Did you take out that T25? Okay. Thank you. Oh man. That's gonna be a tight one. Yeah, I think I'd like one, if you wouldn't mind. Yep, all right, let's do that. And we're gonna lift it up, Greg, and we'll just set it into the bracket. Yep. Lift with your back, not your knees. You tell me when you're ready, Greg. I might not be down all the way in that situation. You can literally rock the thing. I'm just not going to do that because this is a, well, I'm going to actually because I want it down. How close are we, Greg? Okay. Yeah. So this process is always the same. We do sidewalls, then we do end walls. We typically will leave our jams out and our corners out until all those sides and ends are up. That's beautiful. Okay. Huh? I mean, we're trying to make this all perfect level, and my guess is that this is not going to stay level, is it? Is it leaning? Or is it pretty good? Okay, let's go ahead and do this guy. Good? Feel good? Yeah. Okay, so at this point, we're going to do a corner post. Now, I think I left these out on purpose, and that was just because Permacom sells a bracket like this that's like a universal jam or corner. You can buy these. I don't ever buy them. I don't know why, other than the fact that usually just for ease of use, I buy a full bracket and I cut it in half. So I don't know if I'm paying more money for a full bracket versus two of these. I've never even checked. It's just easy for me to have all of the same pieces and not have to think about how many jams. I look at my columns, I order them, and then I get an extra column out of it if I've got two corners to cut. Yeah, and it also gives me a 1/4 inch lip to sit off the concrete. So that is a nice thing as well. But at the end of the day, I just try to make my job ordering materials and thinking about supplies and what I have as easy as possible. We're going to go ahead and use this guy, Greg. You got T25? But normally we would do this at the same time as the brackets. All these brackets would be on early.
I like that.
I'm going to go right around, Greg, and then we can stand this up, and I'll be on the outside. So I'm just going to go ahead and measure my 4 3/8 of an inch, which is the width of my column. Well, this is right on that crack. Yeah. It's a corner column. It's not going anywhere. All right, let's go ahead and stand that guy, Greg. So now it might start to make sense that 2x6 that we put on, because the column is facing in the same orientation as our sides, What's that? Don't scare me, Greg. This is going to give us a 2x6 in plane with these guys, and this is where we're going to start on the interior. I've often wondered why we do that. I don't know. There was some reason, I think we've discussed it many times, like why do we do this? Why not just run all of our sides first? There's a reason, I just can't remember it. It's just the way it is, you know? Yeah. Now I'm not gonna actually typically attach this bottom because we found that sometimes we need to be able to move this a little bit more. I'm assuming we're probably pretty good here. Want to go ahead and attach this guy real quick, just for the ease. But if we don't attach the bottom, we get ourselves the ability to kind of maneuver the pole and make this corner as straight as possible. Right behind you, buddy. I got the column. You can go ahead and, right there, go ahead and throw them in there. Yeah, just, yep. Go ahead and set your bottom. And you're good. Okay, there's that. And then since we have all these marks going around, we're just gonna, and it's gonna be hard for you guys to see, but our sides are gonna overlap our ends, and we're going to line them up. This is where it's usually a two-man job, depending. Sometimes you gotta push and pull. It just depends on how good the lumber is, and it looks like maybe we're out of plumb just a little bit here, Greg. I don't know what's going on exactly. I need a little pole. See this? Let's go ahead and get this guy here nailed. See it? See the mark? It's up a little bit. So I'm just going to take a 20 penny nail. Greg, you're going to lift that up. That post ain't going nowhere. Okay? That way I've got that nail set on my line and I don't have to physically work hard to get that to line up. Make a nice connection exactly where we want to be. All right, Greg. What do we got going here, buddy? And we're off a little bit there, aren't we? Is it leaning? This wall might be this way. Does it look like it's leaning? Yeah. This is not the most solid foundation. I clearly didn't do the best job. We're gonna go ahead and just make it work. There you go, buddy. Use leverage. It's all right, man. This is how you straighten everything out. Want to get this 5-footer? Is it something ain't right here, man? I don't know. 10.5. Yeah, that's exact from edge. Oh yeah. This is what happens when you're talking and doing and measuring. We're just gonna go ahead and cut this at 1.5 inches. I should have been at 5 foot. I was talking about 4'10.5", guys, and I should have been at, the first one is 4'10.5" because we're burning 1.5 inches. Next time I'm gonna let Greg do the work while I talk because clearly I can't do both. The beauty is, we're able to see that right down here at the comfort of the ground and fix it versus later on up in the air. This does make it quite easy. There's your new mark, buddy. That looks a lot nicer. Give me a little more. Right there. At 1.5 inches there. That's all good. Give me a little push. Give me a little push on that girt. A little more in. Push it in. There, right there. Beautiful. Okay, only one mistake. That's actually probably a record. I make way more every day. and that's the truth. I might have made more actually because that was kind of hard to talk and do at the same time. But my thought is, if you can get to this point, you could probably finish it because it's almost the same process from here on out. Your walls are up, you're gonna go truss, do your trims, put your steel on, and it's the same post frame. The real difference that I see is that guys will tell me, yeah, but I show up on day one and I'm digging a hole and I'm putting a post in and I'm building something day one. But that's like the instant gratification mindset. That's the thought that I'm doing something, and people feel like if you're just spending time prepping and cutting, you're not doing anything productive. But if we spend the time at the beginning to do all the layout, to do all the prep, whether it's on a pier or in a post or a wall or just a post in the ground, like prep work is everything, and it can allow you to be more efficient, work with less people. Like, it doesn't matter the size of the building. Greg and I find a way to get it done with systems, with the process. And at the end of the day, this building is on a foundation wall. It's going to be here a lot longer, guaranteed, than post in the ground, which is okay. People think I'm always, hating on post in the ground. That's not the goal. It's just to say people want more out of a post frame. We're not just doing ag buildings these days. The industry has changed, it's evolved, and we have to evolve with it. We have to build better. And that's the point of the demo. I hope it helped. I hope it was at all educational. I appreciate you sitting through it. Greg appreciates it. I'm sweating. There's a lot of talking, but I'm going to be here for the rest of the day, and I would love to say hi, talk, answer questions, and that's the hope, is to help somebody. So with that, that's it. That's it. I think I'm supposed to say link merchant bio. Isn't that what you say at the end? Oh yeah, like and subscribe.